everybody. Yes, live and coming to you from various locations around the world. It is the Gareth Cliff Show at just after 6 on the 2nd of March. Yep. Well into the month that started our lockdowns 1 year ago.
Oh, no.
Wow.
I know, when you think about it that way, you're like, oh, really? Thanks very much, March. Thank you. That's great. So this morning, because it's a Tuesday, we are very happy to have and lucky to have Candice Mama back on the show. It's nice to see you, Candice. How are you?
Look at you, Sia. A round of applause.
How are you doing?
I'm so happy to see you, Gareth, Cliff, and Sia. Like, you guys are glowing. Lockdown's been good for you.
Yeah. Maybe if you saw me in person, you wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
No, I think I've got good eyes. Good eyes. Well, I pay a lot for them, so I hope so.
Oh, jeez.
You got good everything. So while we're doing compliments, lockdown hasn't been too bad for you. Things.
Oh, stop it, Gareth.
If this is your 6 a.m. on a Tuesday.
No, I'm pitching up with 2 men. So you guys just had to wake up, shower, and pitch up. And I had to wake up and like put on a full face and pretend I look like this when I wake up in the morning, which we all know is a lie, a straight up lie.
God bless you.
As it gets darker and colder as we head towards winter, it becomes less and less pleasant to wake up at like 5, you know?
But you've been doing this for a couple of years now, Gareth. Like, you're not used to it?
It doesn't make it any better. And Sia will vouch for me on this one because you do this for, what is it now? It's easily 14 years or so that I've been doing this. And it just, you never get used to it. You never go, oh, yay. There's the alarm. Great. Can't wait to start today. I mean, once I get the show going, all that stuff, then I'm happy. But when it's like the middle of winter and your alarm goes off, you're like, oh, I hate my job. I would rather work in a salt mine. You start thinking about all the things that you'd rather do, and you're like, oh, and then you suddenly realize like this is the stupidest thing to moan about. But the funny thing is, like, people will find something to moan about no matter what they do. Like, if your job was to wake up and go and put on clothes for your favorite designer every day and model them, I bet you those models complain about their lives.
Oh yeah.
If your job is to count your own money in a vault full of gold, you're gonna wake up some mornings and go, oh, that vault, I hate that vault. I wish I didn't have to be there. You know.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. I think it's a part of the human experience, though. Once we have something, like, it's easy to kind of overlook it a little bit and focus on the negatives sometimes.
And we all have a little bit of a martyr complex. Like, all of us feel somewhere deep down inside that, life could be better. We deserve better. And we love to moan. We love to find something to complain about. All of us, including those who pretend to be, like, motivational all the time and always happy. I bet you those people. I'll bet you see it. Even your friend Oprah wakes up some mornings and she's like,
You reckon so?
Not Oprah, not the holy sage.
She just knows that her brand is like, you gotta help these other people along, so you can't think about yourself.
Wait, let me try to think. What could she complain about?
Her weight. She's always worrying about her weight.
That is true.
Okay, true.
That is true.
But then you
Stedman.
have.
I mean,
what a lazy son of a.
What did Uncle Stedman do to you? He's just quiet and munching on banana bread.
If it isn't Stedman sponging off of her, then that leech Gale. Leech Gale. Then it's that ungrateful Dr. Phil whose life she launched, who never gives her enough thanks. I mean, come on, Oprah must be tired of it.
No, I think she has, she wakes up, she looks at the acres of land she has the dogs, she has the chefs ready for her. Yeah, I wouldn't complain.
You know what the funny thing is, like, so you picture Oprah's life as being fairly perfect because she's had all this success and she can now do whatever she wants with her time. But I'll bet you there's something that she's got to do this week that she really doesn't want to do. Maybe it's that she has to, have some trees cut down in a far-flung corner of her estate. And she doesn't really want to because she loves those trees, or because she's had to hire these people who are going to make a huge noise, or maybe she's got a sore foot. Sia, she stubbed her toe this morning on some expensive piece of furniture as she was moving to the bathroom. And now her whole foot is aching, and she's got to have some podiatrist come through.
Operative term, the expensive furniture. Yes.
I'm telling you, there's something that bothers even the great Oprah.
Oh, I agree. And I think, you know what it is, though? I think we assume that once we amass whatever it may be, fame, fortune, love, whatever, a baby, that you're going to be so much happier. But the truth is, you're not actually that much happier. Of course, you're happier than someone who doesn't have those things, I'd assume. But I think Oprah sometimes just misses being anonymous, maybe going to the store and no one being like, oh my God, should I look under my chair? Or like, grocery, you're going to pay for my grocery. Imagine how much people expect from Oprah. Like when she walks into a mall, you're just like, so you're going to pay for this, right? You got this. Oprah's got this.
You just hit the nail on the head. Like somebody somewhere is hoping for her to rescue them. And she's got this weight on her shoulders of all these people she has to rescue, including Gail and Stedman, by the
way. Okay. You know what my new mantra is, though, now? Just try me. Whoever's listening, universe, whatever you are, just try me now. Happiness is also overrated. Give me money. They say more money, more problems. No, give it to me. Let me see. I'll figure it out for myself.
You see, like a drug addict who chases that high, that first high that they had that they loved, or someone who is desperate for fame, and they let's say they do the best they can in their particular field and they become the world's most famous whatever it is. After that, you come down so hard because you realize, like, how do I get that high again? And the same goes for people who have tons and tons of money. You look at how these billionaires are always trying to come up with something new, and not because they need to make more money, but because they get bored very quickly. So everybody's got something on their agenda today that they didn't want to put there, that they're not thrilled to have to do. And don't feel sorry for yourself. Seriously, just don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine. You have to make your life good today, and we're going to help you do that. We've got our one thing for the week later on, which you must remind me about, please, Sia. But Candice, it's really good to see you. So you've been busy, actually, because you are, first of all, you're turning 30 in a while, which is very exciting. And you seem to be a bit nervous about that. We'll get into that in a second. But you were at an event recently, an online event, but it's an event nonetheless, with Deepak Chopra.
Oh, yeah, the great. I mean, the myth. I mean, and you see, he is that calm. Like he naturally is just in that tone of speech. Yeah, I was. I mean, it was so fun. And I think it's one of those things that you just don't think about happening. Like I never thought, I'm going to, MC for Deepak Chopra, or like, interview him or speak to him. It was just like one of those things that happened. And I was like, this is cool. This is really cool.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, it was fun.
Tell me, because something happened to me when I was probably in my early and maybe mid-20s. I also hosted an event where I was backstage with Deepak Chopra for like, I don't know, I was probably in his company for maybe 5 to 10 minutes. But because I was at a stage of my life where I didn't fully appreciate the guy, and this is so, I think this probably happens to a lot of people, where you're not in the right frame of mind, or you're not at the right level of maturity, or you're just dumb. I mean, I'm happy to accept I was just dumb. And there's Deepak Chopra, who, even if you're not a very spiritual person, this guy's, he's made massive strides for all of us in terms of mindfulness and understanding the world and getting to grips with those things that we can't always see.
What did you say or do?
No, I didn't embarrass myself. I didn't take advantage of what so many people in the world would pay thousands and thousands of dollars to do. And that is just have a chat to him and say, hey, you are this incredible guru. Where did it start? Or can you help me understand this? Or there's this one idea that I'd love you to help me unpack. And I wasted the opportunity. I was in the same room as Deepak Chopra, and there was only him and me and maybe 2 other people.
Wow.
And I didn't even bother to start a conversation with him, which is so lame of me. So when I hear his name, Candice, I just go like crazy because I think about that.
But I mean, I think what you experience is what a lot of people probably in building up their career experience, right? We don't want to admit it out loud, but I think there is this element of you going somewhere, like you're on this weird train to nowhere, but you know in your mind where that is, that you actually forget to be grateful for the opportunities you have as you're experiencing them. And then you almost live your life in hindsight because you're like, what? Yeah. That happened to me. Why was I not more in the moment for that? Now in hindsight, it's so cool. So I completely get it. I think.
Well, let's just admit this morning that the real reason we've got Candice on is because we're live on YouTube for the 2nd day running, and we thought we can't possibly have just ugly old me and and Sia, and then we had to have someone else on who would be at least people would tune in to see Candice. You got to take a look at her if you're not on YouTube.
You know what? I just also want to put into the spotlight the fact that I've been having internal discussions with myself. Gareth sent the team a memo on Sunday afternoon, just to say, hey guys, another reminder, we're starting with YouTube tomorrow. Just make sure that you at least look put together. And I'm like, what? So I've been here for 7 years and he doesn't think I look put together. No. So what is put together?
Yeah, I think I've very clearly said there that it mostly applies to me and not to you. So.
But I love that internal dialogue here. Yes. But it's me.
I swear, I will be honest. Yesterday, I even put shoes on. Today, no, I don't even care. But yesterday, I thought, okay, let's look put together for the first day of YouTube school.
So we've got Candice here this morning, and it's good to have her on, and I'm hoping that we'll see you more and more because during lockdown we need to hear from inspiring people like you. And we'll talk in a moment about, because this isn't an interview, you're really just here to be on the show with us and to hang with us this morning. But I do want to ask you one quick thing, because you've really become one of those rare people who can talk about forgiveness. And we live in a time where people are so unforgiving, man. Your dad was killed by that son of a bitch, Eugene de Kock, who I know you've met, and we've discussed this before in interviews. And I don't want to go over old territory, but your dad was killed during the apartheid regime, and he was killed for being an activist. He was killed for standing up for the majority of people in this country at a time where it was dangerous to do so, and the cost of doing so was potentially death, and that's exactly what happened to him. And you lost him when you were a little girl, and you've spent a large part of your life coming to terms with that and dealing with the emotions and the various aspects of what someone who's been through this horrible situation that you went through as a small child, and you've learned to forgive, and forgiveness is the real crux of much of what you talk about now, and it's one of the reasons that you talk with people like Deepak Chopra. And I'm amazed that we live in a time where someone like you, who's got real reasons to talk about forgiveness and who's had to walk a very difficult uphill path, sometimes against all odds and against your own will, to learn the concept of forgiveness. And yet we live at a time where if you go online and you see people slinging mud and filth and lies and ugliness and vitriol at each other from a distance, first of all, and sometimes anonymously, and you think about how unforgiving the online world is, I just thought this morning, because I've got you on, and you've kind of, in my mind, you're one of the very few people who can actually talk about forgiveness in a meaningful way. We are in a messy situation in the world where there is no online forgiveness. I don't know if you read this. It's a ridiculous story, and it doesn't in any way compare to yours, but it shows you how crazy this world has become. The Bachelor in the US, the host of The Bachelor, stood up for one of the contestants and said, listen, this girl wore a dress to a party, and we talked about it on the show before, and now she's being called a racist, and meanwhile she was the girl who was chosen by the black guy who's the bachelor, and then he turned on her as well. And it seems that once you've been cancelled online, there's just no way back, and people have no room in their tiny shriveled little souls for forgiveness. I thought if anyone who is into that cancel culture nonsense is awake this morning and they want to start repairing themselves, because they must be broken people, what a privilege to have Candice Mama here to help guide you along that path, because she could have become a shriveled, angry, bitter, resentful soul. And instead she's this bubbly, delightful, thrilling, positive, happy person who we can't wait to have on the show. Explain how you get there, and explain what you think the basic steps are, because I know you've spoken about this so many times. You've got it in your head like very few of us have.
Oh, thank you, Gareth. And I mean, I can't stand cancel culture for obvious reasons, but the biggest one is I think there's this projection outwards, right? So many people are dealing with their own wounds or not dealing with it, I think is the fair thing to say. And what you end up finding online especially is the fact that people are so wounded. People are so angry. People are so bitter that instead of fixing internally and saying, what's wrong with me? Why am I reacting like this? Why is Gareth giving me such a rise? They just project, and they projectile vomit. And the worst part is there's a community that supports them, right? Because the most thrilling and the most outrageous statement gets the most shares and likes. And, you know, we can go into that. So we live in a world where outrage is rewarded. Right. And that's why so many people are constantly outraged. It's like, oh, the first to be outraged has this moral pedestal that they stand on. And then they get to sling this mud. And the worst part is once whatever they were slinging mud at is vindicated or, you know, forgiven or whatever, they just slink back into their little Twitter corners. They don't say, I'm sorry. They don't, you know, go out of their way to try and make that person feel better. They just like, you know, on to the next one. Who can we target next? So it's a very...
I mean, that gives me the impression that they don't even care about the issue that they're upset by. You know, let's say the issue is something really serious. Let's say it's gender-based violence, for example, which we know in this country is such a big deal. We speak about it in this show all the time. Let's say that's the issue. As soon as something better or more entertaining comes along, they've moved on like this. The very people who promised you that the reason they exist is to fight gender-based violence. You're like, they're heroes that nobody asked for. And then once they think they've, as you say, vindicated this foe, then they move on very quickly. And it seems that nothing can distract them from, like, you know, Date My Family or whatever else the show might be on TV that's now the new trend, and they hop on board that one. It seems to me like they're undermining their own credibility at the same time they're getting outraged and upset without even being aware of what they're doing. There's no self-awareness whatsoever, right?
Self-awareness, I think, is the biggest key behind cancel culture, right? Most people who are canceling other people believe they're so morally righteous that they've got the authority, because that's like taking on the God stand, right? You're like, I am a God, therefore I get to tell you that you are canceled. And you're like, who? What? Like, on what soapbox do you stand on? And I think the fact, yes, Gans here.
No, carry on your thoughts.
No, I was just saying, like, the fact that we're so quick to celebrate people's flaws or weaknesses, or, you know, when they make a mistake in public, that everyone, you know, will jump on this bandwagon. I mean, it shows us how wounded we are as people. Instead of helping, we're trying to be like, hey, you know, yeah, you did do this thing wrong, you know, screw like the 20, 30 years of experience or goodness that you've done. This one little act is going to cancel you.
What I'm amazed by is, even if that happens, and let's say that in some cases it is deserved, because there are people who have been called out on social media, people who've been, you know, doing outrageous and dreadful and terrible things. What I'm curious about is there a path to redemption? Because what you represent and your whole story with your dad is, even though the act wasn't perpetrated against you, it affected you deeply and in a very, very powerful and meaningful way. And yet you decided, I'm not letting this get me down. I'm going to forge my own path to forgiveness. And I'm actually going to meet with the guy who ordered the death of my father. I mean, these are things that very few of those people who are Twitter warriors are ever going to be brave enough to do in a million years, let alone in this lifetime. How do you think forgiveness works online, and should it work better?
It should be working better. And I think the thing is with forgiveness, right, especially the way I teach it, is the fact that it is about you. It's 100% about freeing yourself, because when I was one of those vindictive, bitter people. And I had to take back my power and be like, me being angry, me slinging mud, me walking around like the world owes me something. It doesn't bring back my father, number one. And number two, Eugene is not feeling it in prison. He's not like, ooh, is that a pang in my chest? Candice must be thinking about me, So it really does not impact the person who hurts you at all. It only makes you bitter. It makes you go through life in this really blinded kind of way. And so I think there's always a way forward, always, but you've got to choose it, and you've got to be ready to acknowledge.
Is it like when an alcoholic gives up alcohol, they have to keep working at it? They never say I'm recovered. They always say I'm recovering. Is forgiveness the same? Like, I've tried to be a better person sometimes, because I'm also flawed and full of, human frailties, just like everyone else. And I will sometimes, in a good mood, find it very easy to be forgiving and to be kind and to do the right thing and to say nothing hurtful. But it's also very easy to slip into those dark places that we all know we have. Do you feel like, as someone who's mastered, I'm going to give you the compliment of saying you've mastered forgiveness, that it needs constant reinforcement and you need to remind yourself consciously about it all the time? Or does it just, once you've achieved it, it's there and you've done it?
Wow, thank you, a master. I mean, that's a really huge compliment. But no, I think, it is something I'm consciously aware of, and it doesn't come necessarily to Eugene in and of himself. But the thing is, with forgiveness or trauma or pain, we may experience one big trauma, which for me would be the Eugene situation. But there are other things I've got to forgive, on the daily basis or like on a more regular basis. And sometimes I'll find myself being like, my first reaction wanting to be like, and then I'm like, whoa, and then so I'll train myself. I think it's become a lot easier. It's become a lot easier because I understand it and I live it. So I don't hang on to resentment or anger towards people. And I try not to act from that place, So I think it does become easier the more you do it and the more committed you are to doing it, I think,
You're a better person than me.
Sia can't even find it in his heart to say one nice thing about some of his exes.
I even feel bad for the story that I've been itching to tell, that I was preparing to tell after 7:00. Here's just the brief synopsis. A man who built a house for his girlfriend in Nelspruit. The house is worth 7 million rands. They went through a breakup and he's not doing well. So what did he decide to do? He hired an excavator to go and demolish the house.
Wow. Jeez, that's dramatic. You see, you would do that. You'd do that.
Oh, I would.
Wow.
Even if it would leave me in the minus digits in my bank account. that would fulfill me so much.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The joy in your face. The joy.
He takes such sick pleasure in this. Like, there's not one of my exes that I wish any ill on, but Sia would take the opportunity to be petty like that at the drop of a hat. And you know what? You're not the only one. Sia. Most people are like that.
I believe so, but also I'm the first to say it's not the healthiest thing. It's not the best example of who you are. But baby steps. I've forgiven my childhood bully. I can forgive my sister when we fought yesterday. Exes are not on that list.
It's baby steps. And also, I don't want people, and I always say this, I don't want people to look at me and be like, she must be the ideal girlfriend because, this is, she'd forgive anything. Because because I've had exes like that, believe it or not. And I'm just like, yeah, that's not really how that works, So I also
have a line.
In my head, I do go through scenarios where I'm like, my God, wouldn't it be great to drive his car into the ocean? Like he's a prize. I'm like, wouldn't that be great? Just let him find his keys and on his little overlooking, he's like, is that mine? It is. So in my head, I run through these scenarios. Do I act on them? No.
I think we've got to keep working on Sia's obvious personality flaw here, but we'll get to that later. I'll explain to you what one thing for the week is in just a second if you haven't done it with us before, because we've done one of these things every week since the first week of January, and hopefully they're little things that'll improve your life. And today's one is really quite interesting. We'll get to it in a sec. First, I want to read this from Tracy. She says, being able to forgive says more about your character than it does about the person you're forgiving. The best way to actually get over your fears is to face it face to face. Candice, you are such an inspiration. Well, there we go. That's Tracy's 100% right.
Oh, thanks, Tracy.
Compliment from Tracy.
That's true. Very true.
So, one thing for the week is we just take a couple of minutes this time of the morning on a Tuesday to just find one thing that we can all start doing or stop doing in our lives that'll hopefully make it a little bit better. And this morning's one, I discovered that apparently the UN, that's the United Nations, every year they choose someone at random to deliver a speech to the UN. And even in pandemic years, they'll do it, over the internet, like we're doing the show this morning. But the UN is basically going around looking for people. And if you submit your speech to them, and let's say it's about, I don't know, it could be about a big global issue, or it could be about something small in your country or in your city or whatever it might be. But they are always looking to have random people make speeches to the General Assembly, believe it or not. So every year they choose someone, and you can write a speech this morning, and you can actually write it as if you could deliver it to the UN. And you never know. You can actually submit it to them, and they may actually call on you to deliver a speech to all the world's most powerful leaders. Now imagine that. I mean, maybe you've got an area that you are particularly passionate about. Maybe there's something in the world that you are motivated to discuss. Write a little 5-minute speech this morning. If the UN phoned you up tomorrow and said, we need you to address the world, what would you tell the world? And you can do this. And if you actually go to the UN's website, you'll find links to where you can submit it. But I think all of us should do this as a fun exercise this morning. A 5-minute speech isn't that long. And if you just write down some bullet points of what kinds of things you would discuss, just have it in your head. Think of yourself as being worthy of addressing the world, and watch what happens. Because the moment you actually write down a few of the things that you care about and you put them out into the universe, it's just incredible how your whole idea of what your place in the world is improves. And if you can picture yourself standing in front of the whole UN General Assembly, all the leaders of the world, and telling them about something that you care about enormously, your whole idea of yourself, your whole self-image is going to be massively and markedly improved, even if you just picture it, let alone do it. And it might really happen if you write that speech. So today, draft a speech to the UN. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just start working on it, because you never know.
Very cool.
Wow.
Remember, you used to do this for school. You'd have to make a speech about something. You'd have to do a little draft, some issue. Now it could come true.
Here's a funny update on last week's one thing for the week. So the thing for the week last week was to choose your weapon, or rather how to protect yourself, learn how to protect yourself. And I've been talking about it for such a long time. I've been thinking about it. So I just jumped and I've signed up for boxing now, just to,
look at you.
Right.
My fists are going to be my way of protecting myself. And I was so excited about it. I went and I did a little tour of the place and what will go into a class. And then I call my mother like, Mom, I'm so excited. Signed up for boxing. I said, woo. Then they're going to knock you out. I'm like, thanks. That is my faith flushed down the toilet. Like, no, I can do it. I can. She goes, when they're going to knock you out.
Ye of little faiths, yeah, don't worry. But I mean, you've got to trust your mother to tell you, her version of the truth. I won't say the universal truth. Her version.
She knows. She knows, though. I told them very clearly, I still need to know where my hand is going versus where my eyesight is. My hand-eye coordination is still a thing. So I'm very happy with a punching bag for the first few weeks.
But it's also a great way to get fit. So, we know Sia's diet consists of fast food and very little that's good for you. So this is also a great way, Sia, when eventually you are old like me and your metabolism no longer lives up to your expectations, you won't be fat because you'll have been boxing for years by then. See?
I'm feeling it now, Gareth. So this little...
I'm jealous that you can eat anything and look like that, Sia. What the hell? That is ridiculous.
Not anymore. This macaroon top has to go. I just feel it now on my side. So yeah,
you're that friend. No, you're that friend at a party where everyone rolls their eyes when you say things like that. Oh, I just need to get rid of the last little bit. Oh, shut up.
Those thin model girls you talk about. Oh, I just can't believe how fat I am.
At least I have that working against me, because otherwise, all I have going for me is the fact that I'm just going to print a photo of my ex and put it on the punching bag. You see, there's certain things, hits and misses with us.
Well, good stuff. Yeah, I'm pleased that you're acting on the one thing for the week, and every week we will give you one more thing to add to your schedule, so that by the end of this year, we've all got accomplishments we didn't know we would have. Because it's not going to be an easy year, we know that. 2020 was just the warm-up in many ways. And we've got lots more to do this year. So let's start by improving ourselves, the things we can. So, all right, headline time. There are a few stories buzzing around this morning. The first one comes from ENCA Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane may soon have to fight for her job. Apparently, there's been an independent review panel that Parliament has put together, and they have a prima facie case against her. The National Assembly Speaker, Thandi Modise, appointed the panel to conduct a preliminary assessment and determine whether or not there is enough evidence showing misconduct so that they can get Mkhwebane out of that post. Well, she's been such a disaster that at this point any excuse will do. But for those people who are in a hurry, remember that we do have such a thing as the natural progress of law, evidence, and the fact that we have a process that we follow. You know, we don't just find someone unacceptable and just can them. We actually have to go through a process, and that due process is massively important in a law-abiding country, even if people like former President Zuma don't like to abide by those laws. So Busisiwe Mkhwebane might be on her way out, and this is the first step in that direction. Guess who's maybe running for FIFA president? Anybody want to guess?
No, because then I'd actually have to try and find qualified people. I'm like,
well, this guy is certainly, he owns a football team, and he's done well in business, but you'd never have guessed. FIFA have asked 3 candidates to back South Africa's Patrice Motsepe in the upcoming Confederation of African Football presidential election. A source close to the candidates told AFP. The previous incumbent is a guy called Ahmad. So good you had to name him twice. He was banned for breaches of FIFA's ethical code, but has had the ban suspended by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. So this is not to be the president of worldwide FIFA, but to be the president of the African division of FIFA. So our own Patrice Motsepe is being considered for this. That's according to EWN.
I'm trying not to let my superficial reasons get excited about this.
What do you mean?
Because this is like the second time that his name has popped up in leadership, and then we go, could he be the president of the whole country? Remember when Global Citizen went well, and the fact that, he brought Ed Sheeran and Usher and Beyonce and Jay-Z, and they were like, Patrice Motsepe did this, he should run our country. And I remember, I think he spoke just before the president spoke at Global Citizen, and people were chanting president. And so, look, let's not let these niceties fool us into...
all those idiots who went to that concert were cheering for him just because he brought these artists to them. I mean, you give people a free T-shirt in South Africa and they'll cheer president. They don't know half the time.
But believe you me, in this scope of mine, I'm already picturing Dr. Motsepe as well as our first lady, thinking, well, she's done fashion, she would look fabulous, Wouldn't hurt.
Sia rates first ladies purely on fashion and couldn't care less what their politics are. Maybe that's the way to look at it, because, I mean, Sia, you're still upset about Melania Trump being sidelined.
I'm still I'm still disappointed that we went through a whole term and I didn't get to see her in like 5-inch stilettos trying to garden. You know what I mean? That's what
trying to garden.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah. Like she should have been in the grass with those 5. I mean, because you've worn 5-inch stilettos and you know how they work on grass. So they would have been the irrigation system anyway.
Should have. This is the tomato that you must all eat to be healthy. Love your garden. Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, oh man, she would have been great if she wasn't married to Trump. I think if she was any other person's first lady, I think she would have been. She's so cute, and she's so like she's very pretty. She's very pretty.
Well, jihadists in Nigeria in a much more serious and disturbing turn in the news, and this is something that's reported by EWN this morning as well. Nigeria is in the news every week and we've gone over this territory so many times. This time, jihadists in the northeast of the country who trapped 25 aid workers, security and humanitarian sources have said, in this humanitarian hub. Scores of Islamic State West Africa province fighters invaded the town of Dikwa, dislodging troops from the military base, torching the UN hub. Apparently, they launched simultaneous attacks on the camp, which is the military base, and the UN buildings. And apparently they have 25 staff there who are sheltering in a bunker, which is under siege by the militants. Frightening, ugly, horrible. It's just another day in Nigeria, I'm afraid.
Oh.
Yeah, horrible story. And then 1 in 4 people will have hearing problems by 2050. That's according to the World Health Organization. Apparently, 1 in 4 of us will suffer from some kind of hearing problem within the next 20 years. First ever global report on hearing said the causes of many of the problems, infections, diseases, birth defects, noise exposure, and lifestyle choices, could be prevented. Apparently, there are a package of measures which could cost $1.3 per person per year in combating this loss of hearing. Against that, it set the figure of nearly $1 trillion lost every year because the issue is not being properly addressed. So 1 in 5 people will have these problems. The number of people with hearing loss may increase more than 1.5-fold during the next 3 decades. So what are they saying the main reasons are? Well, there's poor access to treatment, and they say that we have unhealthy lives. We have too much loud stuff going around us. There are public health initiatives about reducing noise in public spaces, increasing vaccinations for diseases like meningitis, which can cause hearing loss. And they say that this is something that should be on your agenda. So, as if we didn't have enough to worry about, now you got to worry about losing your hearing as well.
Gosh.
Oh, jeez. The list keeps growing.
This is comforting as we sit here with headphones and earphones on.
Well, listen, I mean, we would not have jobs if it wasn't for people being able to hear. So look after your ears, please.
What?
Exactly. And then you mentioned Melania. Well, Donald Trump and his wife Melania were vaccinated against the coronavirus back in January before leaving the White House. According to the news site, I think APX, they say that President Trump and the First Lady were vaccinated in January. Joe Biden, who took over as president on the 20th, was vaccinated publicly. And Trump, in a speech on Sunday, his first since leaving the White House, said everyone should get vaccinated, which I think he's been fairly clear about that from the get-go. You know, despite people trying to paint him as some sort of anti-vaxxer, some of Trump's supporters have expressed skepticism about being vaccinated. Remember, he put this plan in place, which is getting more than 1 million people a day, I think, vaccinated in the US. It's incredible. They've got the fastest rollout of any country in the world. It's over 1 million people a day that are apparently being. It's called Operation Warp Speed. And remember, he put pressure on Big Pharma to deliver these vaccinations, which now we are the beneficiaries of here in South Africa too. So two things can be true at once. You can dislike Donald Trump's politics, and you can give him credit for rolling out the fastest vaccination plan in history. And both can be true, right? You don't have to love Donald Trump to admit that part of the reason you've got the vaccine in record time is because of him. And I think credit to Big Pharma. You know, the pharmaceutical industry gets nothing but hatred from us because we all think that they're on a massive profiteering bent, and they may well be, But if they're investing money and time and research, and they've got the best people working on this in the background, and it saves lives, then you really just sound like you're moaning when you complain about them and you refuse to give them their profits, because frankly, these things do not come cheap. And if we want to cancel, if we want to save ourselves from diseases like cancer and HIV and AIDS and Ebola and COVID, who do you think is going to do that? A bunch of politicians who sit in a room and talk, or the pharmaceutical industry with all of their scientists and researchers and chemists and medical experts who are slaving away in the background to make these things happen? So you cannot have the best of both worlds here if you're not prepared to give a little bit of credit to the pharmaceutical industry. We've got to stop being duplicitous about the way that we don't like them and we won't support them and they're evil, but then we'll take their medicines. You've got to choose.
Okay, but look, then he worked on it. He worked on the plan and the rollout, and so he just got a job before he left. It's like, to me, it's like when you pay for the bill at a restaurant and then you're given 3 sweets. You take those 3 sweets, but then as you're about to walk out of the door, you see the whole bowl of sweets, and then you just take a handful more, then you leave. So he got the jab just as he had to exit the White House. That's fine. Okay.
Right. You're not mad at it.
Yeah, you paid for the bill. You ate. You did the work. That's fine. Go ahead, Trumps.
We are going to be joined in a moment or two by JJ Cornish, who, of course, gives us our African update every 2 or 3 weeks. And JJ is on standby to talk to us this morning. He'll be with us in a second. But I just want to go to Jameen's message here, which is for Candice, because Candice was talking about forgiveness earlier on. And Jameen says that Jameen, are a very vindictive person. In my head, I'm always spitting on someone else's grave. I never act on my feelings, though, and I feel so bad for even just thinking these thoughts. I do sometimes say what I feel, and whoa, is it a glorious feeling. Sure. What do you say to that, Candice?
I love that you finished it with, whoa, is that a glorious feeling, right? It's great. It's great. No, I think, it is important to understand that we are human beings. Our first instinct, even, the most righteous, Mother Teresa and those we celebrate, I'm pretty sure they've had thoughts of like, but it's not acting on those thoughts. And it's understanding, that, okay, I'm a human being. I am angry at this moment, but I'm not going to act and express that anger. I'm going to move through it or past it, So, yeah, I'm not mad at the fact that she has thoughts, as long as she's not acting on those thoughts.
Well, that's exactly right. You can't punish someone for thoughts, and you shouldn't punish yourself over thoughts. I mean, your brain is working. Some of those things come about unconsciously because you're asleep and you're processing memories and you're processing ideas and filing your important information for the day. And sometimes you do have horrible thoughts. We all do. That's why you also can't hate people for what they think. You can only put them in jail for the things they do. The moment we cross into the territory of thought police, we're doing some very, very dangerous stuff. And you don't know. You never know what's in someone's soul or in their hearts. And that's what makes, the world of kind of social media and judging people online so very difficult, is because when you do that, you're making an assumption that you can read their minds. You can interpret everything better than anyone else, and you know the truth. And it doesn't even matter what people say. It's all up to you. You've got some godlike power again, that you're able to interpret stuff that no one else can.
But we're all now thinking of ourselves more highly and as if we are better than everyone else, because that's the social media construct. You think about it, the idea of an avatar, to have this idea of who we are, firstly, as just the first step of people engaging with us. It's the best picture of who we are. And then we can post something, and then there's the edit button, and then it might seem very frivolous to bring this up as an example, but there's a filter option where you can edit things and you filter how you look. All of this is building and has built this monster of, this is my best version. Of course, I'm only going to highlight the amazing things that are happening in my life. So actually, I am better than you.
Yeah. And then we can find plenty of evidence if we're looking for it to make us feel that that's true, Even
so
though
cancel culture is a bit of the extreme example, but then you also have mothers who go, "Ugh, I mean, you didn't, look after your kids, make their food, dance around with it. That's all part of the spectrum for me, in my humble opinion."
That's true, though. I agree with your humble opinion.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of humble opinions, someone who doesn't have to be humble about his opinions when it comes to Africa, because he is well-traveled, he is well-experienced when it comes to the continent. He's also our expert when it comes to understanding what to make of Africa, our own home continent. He is JJ Cornish, and it is time for Africa Analysis, which is our bi-monthly feature sponsored by the Johannesburg Business School. And we look at what's happening in Africa. Good morning, JJ. How are you?
Bonjour, I'm exceedingly well, thanks, but it's kind of you to ask nonetheless.
No, it's good to see you. So, JJ, let's just talk. I said to Candice and to Sia this morning and everybody else that we've got a task. Apparently, the UN allows one person a year, some random person, to address the General Assembly. And you can actually send them a speech and they might consider you. It's one of the things that they do, and you can go to their website for all this information. But the UN does a whole lot of stuff all over the world that we don't even know about. And one of the things that they did this week, we don't know how effective it's going to be, is that they passed a unanimous resolution calling for humanitarian help to be delivered to countries where there are conflicts and to stop those conflicts for a little while so that we can have people vaccinated. Do the UN have the ability to make sure that that happens, or are they just saying, please, guys, can we stop fighting so that we can get people inoculated?
Well, it's an excellently posed question. What the UN can and cannot do. I mean, obviously, they send blue helmets into areas where there's conflict. And does that stop the conflict? I mean, they send people in to stand between the two sides. Both sides have to agree that they need to have the UN there before the blue helmeted soldiers arrive. In this case, it was probably one of the last actions by Britain as the chairman of the Security Council. That was February. And they then went on and said, we need a humanitarian ceasefire to allow the COVID vaccination program to go ahead. Now, when they say they need a ceasefire for anything, any conflict resolution, they have to look at Africa, which takes up something like 80% of the UN's conflict resolution capacity. There are 15 conflict zones on our continent. So it has to work here if it's going to work at all. The question, of course, is, have they ever done it before? Well, in 1997, they stopped the conflict in Afghanistan so that they could inoculate people against smallpox.
Oh, wow.
And the polio vaccination that was shoo-shooed in a lot of places and poo-pooed in other places. Nevertheless, in the Congo, in 2010, they stopped conflict there so that they could have the polio vaccination program. So it is working. Now, this is something Antonio Guterres has been working for very, very hard for the last 3 months. And so, one hopes it works. There's so many things with the United Nations. I was correspondent there for 5 years. And it's the easiest thing in the world and the most understandable thing in the world, too, to say, well, shouldn't the United Nations do this? Or, the United Nations haven't said a bloody word about that yet. And the fact is, the United Nations is that organization where you have to say it is better to have it than not to have it. I'm an inveterate multilateralist. I believe that we should all have some say and that it shouldn't just be the strong. Sadly, of course, the United States, whenever something goes wrong, leads towards a sort of unilateralist policy, as do others, but in the shape of George W. Bush, in the shape of even Ronald Reagan and then Donald Trump. That when it's come to it, they've said, we'll decide, and then the rest of the world be damned. The fact is, countries like Belgium and others need to have a say in world affairs. And so I'm an inveterate believer in the United Nations for all its many, many flaws.
Well, I remember this time 4 years ago, we were all complaining that, oh, Donald Trump hasn't said anything about Africa and he's been in office for almost 2 months and blah, blah, blah. Has Joe Biden done anything for Africa yet? Has he said anything about this continent? Has he paid us any attention, or are we clamoring for attention with someone who shouldn't and doesn't care?
No, I do believe Joe Biden will have a lot to say about Africa. And, as it happens, presidents that start slowly and some that appear to have enmity. I mean, Donald Trump, it has to be said, called African countries shitholes, which is not terribly polite. And the thing is, somebody like George W. Bush, who we thought would do very little for Africa, is one of the presidents that have achieved most for this continent. Certainly the
GOA.
AIDS, the AIDS or anti-AIDS campaign. So, Biden's been in he hasn't even had 100 days yet. And he has significant domestic priorities. So I wouldn't expect him to do something soon. But I think that he will name an ambassador here. I don't know what's happened to the U.S. ambassador. She had COVID and was recuperating back home. I actually, she's the South African tennis player who went off, became an American, and then came back as ambassador. Not a bad thing to do, I wouldn't. Yeah.
No, and
she's a handbag designer as well. Huh?
That's right. She designed a line of handbags, which are among the most sought-after items in the world. So good for her. It shows you that you can start off in South Africa and you end up coming back here as a great and good person, rather than just a business person.
And in real conflict too, it has to be said, Gareth. Perhaps we don't understand it as well as all your guests present. But handbags are a significant weapon in some conflicts. I mean, and it's not only the satirists who say that. So maybe maybe he was taking the Americans used drones in Somalia and places like that. He used handbags in South Africa. Maybe it wasn't that ineffective.
Well, I want us to talk about Rwanda because we haven't had our eye on them for a very long time. Rwandan legal authorities have tripped over their feet in order to admit that they intercepted privileged and confidential legal material in their prosecution of Hotel Rwanda man on terrorism charges. Just explain this. This guy's name is what? Paul
Rusesabagina. Abagina. Now, he's the guy, if you saw the movie Hotel Rwanda, that was the in charge of the Hotel Mille Collines. It means the Hotel of 1,000 Hills. And he put up Tutsi and Hutu moderates who were in danger of being swept up in the genocide, killed in the genocide, and very bravely held them while the forces of the genocide came and demanded them. He held them. Now, he has been given the Medal of Honor in the United States, various awards for this. He's internationally regarded as a hero for what he did. However, he sided with opponents of Paul Kagame. And that is a bad news thing to do. I mean, as we've learned in our own country, people dying at the Michelangelo Hotel simply because and people being shot in their driveway. International borders don't stand in the way of Paul Kagame's revenge when he seeks
it. It has to be said, right, JJ? There are a lot of people who are big fans of Paul Kagame, and they say that he's the kind of leader that we need in Africa. And look at how he gets these things going, and business is thriving in Kigali, and look at how well they keep their streets clean on a Sunday, and that kind of thing. He has fans.
Yes, certain fans, yes, law and order people, and he has in the freedom-loving People's Republic of South Africa many, many fans. Have you been to Rwanda? Have you been to Rwanda? Have you seen how clean the streets are? You dare drive a dirty car in Rwanda and you're in stone trouble, and the fans of Paul Kagame that I've met have almost to a man or to a woman been mlungus, who would like to see that kind of order in their own country. The fact that he has probably the most parlous human rights record on the continent, apart from Eritrea, is something we need to look at, because it's monstrous what he does there, and it's a nightmare. So he fell short. Rusesabagina fell foul of him and went off and sought refuge in Belgium and took Belgian citizenship. And so he was actually abducted to bring him home to stand trial on terror charges, trumped up terror charges. And that's what's happening. Now, the Attorney General and who's also the Justice Minister in Rwanda, he's said, no, we haven't done anything wrong. But in an interview just the other day, admitted that they'd intercepted mail and intercepted correspondence and were using this in their prosecution of Rusesabagina. And so, as I say, it's an absolute shame. The several countries have expressed their concern about this. Hopefully, South Africa will be among them. South Africa, because of his killing opponents within our borders, actually withdrew the ambassador for a while as a protest, which is, pretty heavy-duty protest. And one hopes that if we maintain the moral high ground that we often believe we occupy, we'd have something to say about what is happening to the Hotel Rwanda man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we choose when we're going to be moral and ethical and use our moral high ground. And sometimes it looks like the less we say about these things, the less of that moral high ground we continue to occupy, right?
Well, sadly, this is the case. I mean, there we were when with Madiba at the helm. We were certainly a country to be envied. There was nothing to touch us. And we have slid and slid and slid from that. And but the fact is, internationally, we're still, I suppose, sort of in the top half of the log. I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan, so I can stand falling off the top for a while, as long as you're not completely relegated. But this is the fact. But then you have other countries like Senegal, which don't have much going for them, but have enormous moral weight, and I envy them so much. And I do believe that if we did things right, we could regain a lot of that.
Yeah, I don't know what our reputation is like at the moment, but we did have a couple of foreign ministers in a row who were hardly doing us any favors in terms of our position on the continent. And there are lots of countries. There's the Francophone Anglophone divide, which you've discussed before, Jean-Jacques. But South Africa is not viewed as being a moral high ground type place by some of our compatriots on this continent, right?
And mentioning foreign ministers who didn't do that well, you're being kind in omitting presidents who
yes, that's also true,
who actually dragged us through the mire a little, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Well, listen, it's always good to check in with you. I believe just one last thing on your parting shot is Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala has
Iweala, yes. She's the former finance minister in Nigeria. And
she's taken over as what, WTO head or something?
She's taken over the World Trade Organization. She was chief executive of the World Bank at one point. Of the IMF, I would say, of the IMF. She's a phenomenal figure and a real fighter. And she took over yesterday as president of the world, chairman of the World Bank. Her ascendancy was blocked by Donald Trump for some reason, maybe an anti-African reason, and he wanted to put a South Korean in her place. But the moment Trump fell, the South Korean dropped out, and Okonjo-Iweala came in, and she has had lots to say. She's going to work very, very hard on getting equitable dissemination of the COVID vaccine. That's one of her primary things. But generally, to see that developing countries get a better deal from the WTO, because the WTO decides on trade disputes. But just for openers, quite interesting, a bunch of Swiss newspapers. You won't really often accuse the Swiss of being politically incorrect, but a group of newspapers said, oh, well, WTO now in the hands of some granny or some grandmother. Well, I mean, I don't mind people speaking irreverently. I find that quite amusing. But even I, with that approach, my ear lobes grow red with embarrassment when I think about these Swiss. Happily, they've apologized, and she said something sort of mollifying and saying, well, I'm very pleased they've apologized, but I'm going to get on with this job. So we've been watching her, Garth, very, very carefully. We're going to be watching her very, very carefully in her actions in the years ahead. She's there till 2025 August, and she's got her work cut out, because it's a massive job she has, and a very controversial one. So she's going to be stepping in between the superpowers and the developing countries. It'll be, but she's hit the ground running, and that is important. I think she's a hard-working woman, and I think Nigerians realize that. They must be very proud of having her in that position.
JJ, always good to see you. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. That is JJ Cornish, and this is brought to you, as it is every couple of days, by the Johannesburg Business School. Candice Mama is with us this morning, and we got lots to talk about in the next hour, so stick around. We want to hear from you. 0797482090 if you want to send us a message, or you can do so on the chat on Webinar Jam, or you can watch us on YouTube live. This is cliffcentral.com.
Do you grunt when getting out of the car? Creak when getting out of bed? Do you walk into a room and forget why? Are you having trouble in the sack? Is the hump in a slump? Join me, Chris Haven-Smith, and Dr. Mark on the T-Health Show every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. where we talk to medical and allied professionals about those serious and not so serious medical lifestyle issues. The T-Health Show, sponsored by the T-Clinic. The T-Health Show is available on podcasts. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
Just because it's about technology, connecting your business to the rest of the world doesn't mean you need to send rockets to space and use complicated solutions. Want to simplicate things? Well, join Jaco Voigt, who is the CEO of Catalytic, on the Unbundled podcast. With skin in the game and a keen focus on educating and assisting you and your business, Jaco decodes all the aspects of connectivity, security, and cloud solutions. Unbundled is brought to you by Catalytic and is available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The world's apex predators have fearsome reputations, so it's hard to believe that some of them are facing a fight for survival.
In Gansbaai and Valsbaai, white sharks are almost completely disappeared.
Blind Conservation is the story of these endangered predators. In our first episodes, we speak to global experts about the alarming plight of the great white shark.
Each shark that lives out there, one day out of 4 days, it can be killed.
And what you can do to help one of nature's most magnificent creatures survive for future generations. Join me, Spike Ballantyne, and my co-host, Anthony Mederer, for Blind Conservation, available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We live in a rapidly changing world, but how we get paid remains stubbornly outdated.
We have this archaic payday cycle.
The Future of Pay is a podcast series that explores the impact that the current salary status quo has on South Africans.
When you are desperate, you will do anything to get that money to put food on your table for your family by tomorrow evening.
And how innovative startup SmartWage is looking to change things.
There's a very simple problem here. People are waiting till the end of the month to get paid, and the impact is that they can't afford expenses that come up during the middle of the month.
The Future of Pay, brought to you by SmartWage, available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. We are back, cliffcentral.com, on a Tuesday morning. We're joined this morning by Candice Mama, who is our special guest host, and it's always good to see you. You will remember Candice had her own show on cliffcentral.com not so long ago. It's where many people will have remembered her from. You missing that at all? What are you actually up to at the moment? Give us a little update on your life right now. What have you been doing during lockdown?
I absolutely miss Cliff Central. I always say it when people are like, how did you get started? I'm like, Gareth Cliff actually took a chance on me when I would come into studio and be like, so I'd like my own show. And so I miss it so much. And I'd come into studio like a tornado.
There were two people who I always loved seeing on a weekly basis. And Sia knows exactly who I'm going to say now, because these two people would come in with smiles and hugs and happiness and overflowing with just optimism and positivity every single time I see them. The one, what happened, Sia?
I just hit my whole situation here. Ow. Between my glass of water, my laptop, the mic, everything started moving.
The first person was you, Candice, because you are that kind of, you just got that energy. And the other one is Hlubi Mboya, who Hlubi used to come in and she would just bear hug everybody. It took about 5 minutes for her hellos to be completed before she could even start doing anything. So
walk into meetings as well. So, hello. How's it, guys? Are you good? You are good. Okay, yeah. Love you. Love you. It's actually so contagious, the both of you. It's your energy is palpable, and even if you're sort of feeling down in the dumps and you feel like I'm not a touchy-feely person, you bring it out of people. It's a good.
Oh no, I love you guys, and I think what people downplay what Cliff Central did for so many of us. I mean, there were so many shows of newcomers, and you took a chance on all of us, Gareth. But I think the most important thing was it was a family. I felt like you guys were my family. Every time I'd come into studio, I'd be like, I'm going to go see the fam. And it was just such a good vibe. So I completely miss it. That is the answer to the question.
Are you doing anything like that right now?
Yeah, so I've got I've got a podcast and a YouTube series running, and I saw you actually had a guest I'd had on my podcast, Evie Pompuris, on the show on E. I love her.
Agent.
How amazing is she? So I hunt down people that I find really cool and inspiring around the world, and I speak to them on my podcast, Coffee with Candice, and then I speak to my friend Elissa as well. So yeah, you guys, honestly, Cliff Central's where I got my confidence. I was like, hey, I think I might be okay at this.
Well, that sounds great. So if you want to check out the podcast that Candice is doing now, you'll be able to find that. We'll put all the links up on cliffcentral.com as well. And you'll be able to go and partake. Quick thing here. This is an email we got from Wes. Wes wants to know, Wes was listening the other day and heard us talking about podcasts that we listen to. And Damon asked a question. Any suggestions? Wes says he's really into philosophy, history, skills development. Any audiobook suggestions? And maybe we could even do a weekly update on this. I'm trying to get through this 100 books to read before you die list, but Pride and Prejudice is boring as hell, says Wes. So I've actually got a couple of ideas here for you. So audiobook, I've said this a couple of times, so I may be repeating myself here, but the finest audiobook I've listened to in 3 years is probably Stephen Fry's Mythos, where he talks about Greek mythology. And even if you're not a fan of, or you don't have any understanding of Greek mythology at all, you'll pick up stories in Greek mythology that are just such a part of human storytelling that it's just beautiful to listen to, and especially because Stephen Fry is such a great storyteller. He's got that lovely voice, he's got that amazing way. He's got the dramatic, theatrical background that just, he tells stories better than almost anyone else. I could listen to him all day. So Mythos by Stephen Fry is a great audiobook to buy if you haven't got it already. And that'll keep you busy for a couple of weeks. A book, I would say that the best book I've picked up in a while, and I've only just started it, but it's already looking like it has the most potential, is something called Dominion by Tom Holland. And it's really, this is more for history fans than anything else. And since Wes mentioned history in his list of interests.
And this is not Tom Holland, the actor, right?
No. Okay. No.
Multi-talented.
He's like 18, 19 or 20 years old. Very fascinating.
Yeah, if you want a book, this is probably. Have you guys read any good books lately? You want to maybe suggest one to Wes?
I could suggest the podcast. I don't know how the viewers are going to judge me based on this one, but The Real Dictators. It tackles history, but it looks at it through the lens of dictators. It's actually so brilliantly done. There are all these people, historians, that come on and they speak about like Mao Zedong, Stalin, and how they rose to power, and they look at the country's context too. So I absolutely love that podcast. It was so good. Oh, it's so good. I'm obsessed.
I'm writing it down as we speak. That sounds like an awesome one. And then since we're talking podcasts, I found a very cool one. And this is interesting, again, if you are into history and architecture, and they overlap in this podcast. There's a podcast that's just been released. They've done 3 episodes. Someone called Emma Rutland. Sia, you like this. She's actually the Duchess of Rutland.
Ooh.
She's the 11th,
yes,
11th Duchess of Rutland, and she's a lovely woman. She was born in Wales, and she married this English aristocrat, and she lives in a place called Belvoir Castle, which is spelled Belvoir. Yeah, it's not what you think. And Belvoir Castle is one of the most beautiful buildings in the world. It's like this fairy tale castle. And she's put together a podcast where she goes around England and Scotland and maybe even Ireland and Wales. I'm not sure. She's only done 4 episodes. And she asks the women who run these castles what it's like, what makes their historic home special. And it's really a cool, interesting podcast if you're into that stuff. So check that out. It's called, what is it called again? Duchess. Duchess. And that's quite a fun one if you're interested in something different to what Candice and I had suggested this morning.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like that being at home allows for a show and tell situation. But I just got into this book, and I'm like, I would recommend it for anyone. I think I spoke about it briefly a few months ago, but it's only now that I got my hands on and started reading it. It's by a gentleman by the name of Anthony Ray Hinton, and he was wrongfully imprisoned. You see, I don't know, maybe sometimes my recommendations are a little doer and sad, but he spent almost 30 years on death row. And he writes about how he had to just focus and how he kept on going. And you can't even get into a book like this and then wake up on a Monday and go, oh, well, what a crappy life that I have, because you aren't on death row, you aren't in. Yeah. So it's called The Sun Does Shine, because these are the first words he said as he was released. He hadn't seen the sun for 30 years, and he walked out, saw the sun, and was like, the sun does shine. I'm like, okay, Mr. Hinton, if you can have a good life, then so can I. Yeah,
then we really have to read about, right?
Jeez.
Yeah,
Pardon?
See, I can't read stories like that because I hate these wrongfully accused situations. It just, obviously, I can't even watch movies like that. It drives me crazy. Remember, what was that one? The movie where the guy gets put to death and he did nothing wrong.
Oh, what is it about?
It traumatized me so much that I avoid those kinds of shows now. If people end up in jail for like 20 years for no good reason, and then they find new evidence and they get released. I'm not like, oh yay, they got released, they found new evidence. I'm always like, Give them those years back. How dare you?
Exactly. I'm on the same wavelength. And I remember on America's Got Talent, one of those shows, a guy came on and he was going to sing. And he spoke about his backstory, and I was just like hysterically crying like a crazy person. And basically his story was he was wrongfully convicted and he finally got out. And the one show that had him going was America's Got Talent. And he sang this beautiful song. And I was just like, oh, my heart, my heart. And like you said, Gareth, for me, it's like, I'm always like, give him his years back. No amount of money can buy back those years. Even if the government does end up paying you like $1 million, $10 million, 20 years, you can't buy that.
Well, Ruth just reminded me the movie's called The Green Mile. And thanks, Wes, for that email, because I didn't know that we would turn this into like a podcast about what other podcasts we want you to listen to, or what other books we want you to read. But there we go. Now you've got a lot of homework for today. Sia, I want an update from you, because I saw another clip of Prince Harry talking to Oprah, in which he basically sold his dad down the river. The clip that I saw, Harry's busy talking about how difficult it was for his mother and how he didn't want Meghan to have the same kind of life. So he needed to help her escape. That was more or less the gist of it, right?
Yeah, he says something along the lines of, with the dramatic piano, because, you always need that. There's pauses in between. And he says, it's actually a wonder, as he grabs Meghan's hand, that I'm sitting here talking to you because we made it out. Ha ha ha! Because, then you start thinking, what are you actually going to say? And what is then his direct encounter?
Gosh, I don't know how I feel about these two. I do get it. Like, I get the fact that, firstly, Meghan, I feel like, has been painted as this big bad villain who came and swept this prince out of his kingdom and, made him abscond his family. But I think, obviously, with the crown, we're getting an inside look to some degree about the royal family, how hard it is, and his mother, obviously. But I don't know, there is a element of Prince Harry and Meghan that I feel like is a little manipulative. I feel like the way they communicate and the baby, the baby sharing, I don't want anyone to know about my little Archie, but here he is. And let's have an Archibald Foundation and let me give Oprah, let Oprah give me $100 million to share my story. And all of a sudden you've got all these terrible things to say about the monarchy and your family, when you actually looked like you were living your best life. And I'm not saying that people can't have a terrible behind the scenes life, and families are complicated for all three of us, let alone the whole world, right? But I don't know. There's a very theatrical element to them that I can't get behind. And I just think that they're being a little vindictive with, the way they phrasing how the queen is. And so I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan.
I'm with you. I'm with Candice, and Sia knows this. I've been pretty much on this side of the argument for the longest time. But here's this Harry, right? This ungrateful little shit who really owes us. The whole reason he matters to any of us is because he was born to Prince Charles, not Princess Diana. God bless her, she's not here anymore. But Prince Charles. The reason we know he exists is because of his father, and who his father is, and who his father will become the King of England. Okay, so he basically says in this interview that they got out. He's managed to save his wife Meghan, not like his father who didn't save his mother, and sells his dad down the river. Now, Prince Charles may be a lot of things, but he's not some attention-seeking publicity whore like Harry and Meghan are. And the best of them all, I'm going to say this until I'm blue in the face. People don't like to hear it. The real fairy tale is Prince Charles and Camilla. That is true love. They managed to, they fell in love years ago, and they stayed in love, and he cheated on Diana. Yes, that's wrong. But true love won the day, because after she died, they managed to get back together, and they managed to get married, and they managed to make everybody okay with it, which is a real fairy tale. And Camilla doesn't look like Diana looked. So I know a lot of people will look at this picture and go, but the fairy tale princess is meant to be gorgeous and beautiful, and Diana was, and Camilla looks like a horse and all that stuff.
No, Gareth, no.
I don't think Camilla's horrible. I think she's actually the best of all of them. When did you ever see Camilla asking for attention? When did you ever see her selling an interview to anybody? When did you ever see her going on the cover of a magazine in some glamorous outfit? Even if she was that kind of person, and she isn't, thank God, what she's doing is supporting the monarchy. She's supporting her new family that she's married into. And she, to me, is the model princess. Forget about glamour and looking good in Vogue magazine and dancing with John Travolta, all of that stuff. God bless Princess Diana. She's not here anymore. But Camilla, to me, is she's a good person. That's a good person who's trying to do the best she can, and it's never about her. So, you know what, Harry? Look to your stepmother if you want some guidance on how to live your life. Stop trying to look at your miserable wife and your attention-seeking mom and yourself.
Let's also see the bigger picture in all of this, and that's how we can see the Harry and Meghan game plan. They could have done this interview last year. They could have done this interview late in 2019, there we go, late 2019. But no, they've strategically done it now. Why? Because the world is opening up again. And they're gearing up for talks. They're gearing up to travel again. They're gearing up to open abuse shelters that they have funded. They are gearing up to release a book so that they can go on a world tour. That's part of the game plan.
And right. It's very manipulative.
It is. Yeah, but also, Sia, like, sorry to interrupt you. I think it's more the case for me. Like, it's very strategic because they tried it during COVID, but they realized there were bigger issues. No one cares. Okay, fine. You escaped a monarchy. Well done. And so when they realized that, oh, no one actually cares right now because people are actually dying around the world and people are losing their jobs and their bigger issues, they had to kind of tone it back. But the thing is, if you've noticed, Meghan only gives talks where they're going to give a huge public standing. She only speaks about Black Lives Matters when all of a sudden she's Black, when all of it's a time in Hollywood, she's identified as a white actress. And now she knows the struggles of being a Black woman. I mean, give me a fucking break. Like, it's just
nobody even knew she was Black.
Gareth brings it out in me.
But you're right. I mean, like, we had to wait until we met her mother to know that she was Black, because frankly, I think a lot of people didn't realize any of that stuff when they watched Suits and didn't care, frankly.
And the only PR family member that could make it to the wedding, because having your Black mother there is better than having your white father who supported your acting, who you were on set with, who supported your whole lifestyle. And now it's inconvenient because you want to identify as the first Black woman in the monarchy. And now it's convenient.
I still reckon she's going to try and run for president in the United States one day because she's a princess, because she's got the best of both worlds, because she's been an actress. You know, I wouldn't put it past her to have a political career in her future. Maybe not president, but senator or something like that. You can see she's into that stuff.
I think that would kind of be a step below her if she continues. I'm really being objective here. I will call it for what it is. Yes, I think Oprah's everything, but there's a certain holy trinity that she is now itching to be part of. She's befriended Oprah. As soon as she befriends someone like the Obamas or the Clintons, almost getting their endorsement, you're now in a certain group that will make people never, ever, ever want to call you out on something. Or as soon as you're called out, then the mob will say you're being a hater. But believe you me, she has at least 3 books in her. They have at least another Netflix deal that will be worth hundreds of millions. And yeah, Archie is going to go on and serve in the Congo when he's a...
Yeah, he's going to be forced to attend all kinds of terrible things just because it's going to be good for the parents' PR. Well, for those people who don't care, I've said this before, for those people who don't care about that stuff, at least you know now what's going on. You've got like Sia's expert opinion on the royals because he does know more than any of the rest of us. So Candice, what kind of stuff are you doing to keep sane during lockdown? Because it has been going on forever. We're back to level 1 now, which I'm told is better, although I don't know how it's going to change my life. What are you doing to keep sane?
Oh gosh, I think for me, and this is not the most popular opinion, but I'm loving the fact that I don't have to say yes to social functions. I don't have to feel obligated to be anywhere. I can listen to my podcasts in peace, work out, read, do stuff that actually enriches me. So I've been doing a lot of that. I've been working out, I've been reading a lot, I've been writing a lot. And so that's been my focus. And that's actually, I don't know, I feel like it's been really good for me. 2020, 2021, just on an introspective, very selfish level, it's been so good, so good. And yourself, Gareth and Sia?
I feel like some days I'm really happy it happened because of all the things you've just said, but also because I feel like the pace of our lives was getting kind of ridiculous. I mean, in 2019, I was busy every single day, weekends, weekdays. I did a huge amount of traveling in 2019. I was in meetings from like 9 a.m. until 6 o'clock at night on some days, and it just became too much. When you're on the highway and your heart's beating faster than it should because there's traffic and you need to be somewhere, and then when you get home, you are rushing to reply to emails, even though you've just got home and you haven't even changed, you haven't even had a bite to eat. Those feelings don't subside when you get into bed at night and your stomach's in knots because you've got things to do and people to see and places to go. And there's so much on your mind. And I know it sounds silly, but I'm really glad that the pace of my life has slowed down. I jokingly said to Sia a couple of weeks ago on the show, I suppose I know what retirement feels like for very old people. Because this year has felt almost, 2020 anyway, felt almost like a forced retirement for all of us. We've had to figure out what waking up whatever time you want to is like, at least many of us, not all of us. We've had to feel what it's like to not have 20 things in a row that you have to do that day. We felt what it's like to have time to cook a meal or have a conversation or spend time with family. And those things, as irritating as they are because they might not have been our first choice in the 2019 world, I think they've done us some good.
And then on the flip side, even if you do have 20 things to do in a day, I think you're now more appreciative of it because you see people losing things and, companies are closing and, people have to downgrade their lives and lifestyles, and now whatever you have, I think you're a bit more grateful for it. Who would have thought that this is what we needed to teach us all of these things?
Yeah,
I'm sort of ready now to start doing some, in inverted commas, normal stuff again. Like I'm ready to start seeing people in small crowds, not huge crowds, but I'm ready to go out to restaurants and do that kind of thing again. I think that's fun.
Yeah. No, and I think, what it is, I think we're going to approach it from a different, at least for me, I think I'm going to approach it from a different standpoint, whereby I used to be someone who felt so like I would rather die than disappoint someone. So I was always socially busy and socially engaged. And then I'd get home and just completely collapse because I've spent no energy on myself and just given it to everyone. And now it's like, who is important? Am I adding to them? Are they adding to me? Where do I want to invest my time, my energy? Is this car important? Is this apartment important? Is this dress important? There's so many things now that you get to sit back and question that you didn't have to before. And I think if we can approach this, phasing back into reality or, socializing, if we look at it from a different standpoint, I think it could be very beneficial for us.
Hey, I'm not missing those events that I used to be invited to that I had to keep coming up with excuses for not going. Now I'm like, well, COVID, I'm terrified of COVID. I just turn into, if someone who sends those invitations to me, and they haven't been a fortune of them because I think most of them have been canceled, but the people who do send those invites to me now must think I'm the most paranoid, frightened person in the world. I'm like, no, I can't take COVID.
It's a pandemic.
I can't do this. Meanwhile, what I'm doing is like, Jesus, anything to not have to go.
Jeez, but Candice, you moved in the middle of all of this.
I did. And I think it was, it was one of those, I explained to you, Sia, it wasn't a big thing for me. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, like, what am I? It was more like I felt like I was stagnant. I felt claustrophobic in my own life. And I think COVID having stripped back so much of my life, I was like, what is important to me? What are my core values? What do I want? And, to me, it was like, just move to Cape Town, like book a one-way ticket. And I did. I booked that one-way ticket. I came to Cape Town, and it's one of the best decisions I've made. So I'm happy, really happy.
I think that's very brave to do during a year like last year, but well done. I mean, this
Thank you.
Change is as good as a holiday. And are you pleased you made the decision now that you've been there a few?
Man, I love it. Like, I feel like such a regular Karen. Like, I've never felt so entitled. I'm like, excuse me, I asked for milk. I asked for almond milk. Oat milk.
Oh, and squeeze it out of that almond, okay?
It's fantastic. Oh, I feel privileged.
Listen, everybody enjoy Candice while she still has a personality, because Cape Town's going to suck it out of her. She's going to be the worst Karen in the world soon.
Oh, you have no idea. Prepare, world, prepare. It was no mistake. I made the Dictators podcast the recommendation.
You referred to something which I think is on a lot of our minds at the moment. There are lots of people who are looking for purpose and meaning and just something to do, especially if you've just finished matric. We were talking earlier about how so many young people have matriculated and now they're going to be trying to find a career for themselves. And I thought it would be fun to talk to someone who works with a partner of ours. They've been with us at Cliff Central from day one, and that is Nando's. I want to speak to Pascale, who is the head of food at Nando's, Pascale Sobiecki. How are you, Pascale? Nice to see you, by the way.
Good morning. I'm well, thanks.
Good. It's great to talk to you. Now, listen, one of the reasons that so many people are stuck in their lives is because they tend to think, well, these are the only career paths available to me. And a business like Nando's has so many moving parts. I mean, you guys are an international super business, and you make the most amazing food, which people all over the world love. But you also have various departments that do so many interesting things. I mean, you're head of food. What does that mean?
So it means I have the best job, right? Tell Doug.
Tell me what you do on a day.
So it's so varied, which is why I love my job so much. It can vary from, like, depending on the time of the year, if it can be quite strategic, like planning what we're going to do for the next year or 2 years with regards to innovation or food. And it can, we are wearing gumboots, and I'm in a factory running a first production trial with one of our many suppliers. So you can imagine that's quite interesting because, right, there's ice cream and desserts and chicken and bread and salads. And so you get to go to all these factories, and I think factories are so fascinating.
Absolutely.
You sit a lot in meetings, I must say. The Zoom is killing me, as it kills all of us. But you sit in meetings from back to back because there's so many cross-functional departments to make anything happen. So you really have to work with all the different teams in the business. So there's a lot of meetings. You could be in a suit presenting to Jeff the one day, and the next day you could be cooking in a kitchen. So it's everything from creating the ideas, understanding the consumer needs and trends, all the way through to launching a product.
You can't possibly be head of food and enjoy the fact that you're not experiencing these things in person. So, I mean, it's very difficult during a year like all of us have had to hold down your job and to keep it stimulating for yourself and for everybody who works with you. But this thing about the factory, I mean, we all think of Nando's as being like these almost family-owned stores where you go in and you know you're going to get great chicken and whatever else you want because your menu is so extensive. But what goes into, you talk about strategy, what goes into planning that stuff? How does it work behind the scenes? Can you tell us stuff, or are you not allowed to?
I can tell you that kind of stuff. It's quite generic. So basically, when it comes to strategy, I always think you have to start off with your landscape, right? So what's happening out there in the world, what's happening in our country, because what happens is these macro trends, they influence consumer behavior, which influences food trends, which influence what we should be doing. So I really start hunting just to understand and learn as much as I can. And then once we understand food trends that are relevant and we think are applicable to Nando's, then I can create, we call it ideation, can create ideas that link into that and deliver those consumer needs and also business needs, of course. And some of the things, like you say, some of the suppliers I then need to go to, some of them are baby mom and pop stuff. We've developed suppliers that used to work at flea markets and never supply and help them grow, which we're super proud of. And you know how proud we are of our chili farmers and all those good things. And then sometimes really big suppliers, like some of our chicken suppliers, are massive suppliers that you work with. So it's quite interesting because it's just all over the show.
Well, I went to that chili farm that you guys have in Mozambique, and it's easily one of the most fun things I've done. And I came home with a little handful of those chilies, which I still have some, and I still put them on some of my food. But you've just said something that got me thinking. Food trends. What are the world's food trends, and how have those changed over the last year and a half with this pandemic? And the fact that maybe supply chains have been disrupted, and people have had to think more at home than they used to, and maybe even cook more than they used to.
You're right, Gareth. They're cooking a lot more, hey? So we really have seen a surge of, the upload of recipes, and people, if you just ask the likes of Woolies, all their stuff that disappears off the shelf that never used to. And I'd say one of the biggest changes in food trends, people always used to say, they used to claim that they would eat healthy food, but that wouldn't really convert, right? So they would still be as indulgent as ever, but now we're actually seeing conversion where people really are caring about their health and their family's health. So there's definitely doing more than just saying. There is experimentation with things like plant protein where people care about the planet more, like they're looking and they're seeing the impacts of COVID and they're caring more. Like, you see all this packaging that you get when you do one shop. If you see how much packaging you put in your bin. So people, I think, are becoming more aware and wanting to make a difference to their health. Vitamin sales, we've spoken to people in the pharmaceutical industry that truly have skyrocketed. Like, people are buying and using vitamins now and minerals, so I think naturality, which is one of the trends, is definitely hot. Things like sustainability, plant protein, definitely growing. South Africa, it's niche, of course, because, when you have an economy like ours, it's not the same as the UK. So our people just need to eat, So, also value. I mean, with the economy, it just brings to mind that one of the next most important things we're going to have to do is try and give good food to people at affordable prices, because people are going to lose jobs, they're going to suffer. We need to be able to find ways to deliver that goodness to them.
I'm trying not to hog all the questions that I have for you here. Sia and Candice will have a go in a second. I want to know about jobs, because you just mentioned how much strain and difficulty there is on so many people in South Africa, and it's been an ongoing discussion on the show for the longest time. But what kinds of careers are available to people at Nando's? And do you guys have jobs available? Because there may be someone sitting there thinking, you know what, I love this brand. I love the kind of the stuff I know about it, which is out there in public. And I love the food. I love the ethos of Nando's. But how do I even begin to approach this thing? And what are the options? What are the career paths available? So
at Nando's as a whole, what is fascinating is this, like I mentioned, that massive cross-functional team. So you get supply chain, because remember there's quite a massive team that look after how do we get every supplier to produce in full on time to all these different depots. There's distribution. Like, people forget that like everything needs to be distributed. That's a whole science on its own. There's operations. So how all the guys in the restaurants are led by ops teams, and there's training departments. So I might develop a recipe. How do they train it on videos and specific training techniques, training cards? There's HR, of course, is quite strong with so many people in restaurants and within the Nando's team. There's a big finance team. Our marketing are just the best team out there. The marketing must be the best marketing place to work for. Sure. And then within marketing, there are all these different disciplines, right? There's what we call brand experience, consumer experience. There's strat, and there's, all the sides with the amazing and above the line, below the line. There is in the field marketing. So in the restaurants, making sure that we position things in the right places, do the right things when we launch or open a restaurant. Then what else? There is, it's just so varied, Gareth. It's just, honestly, it's like a world out there.
I'm glad that there are gaps available and people can come in and try and figure this out. Candice and Sia, I know you've got lots of things to ask the head of food at Nando's, so go ahead.
Yeah, me and Sia started with a mutual.
You know, Pascale, I'm just going to look at this, facts that came through. It's from a company called GCS Market Research, Gareth, Candice, Sia Market Research. Wow. So the head of this company, Sia Sangweni, would like to just make more of a statement and say, Pascale, I am ready and willing to test new ice cream flavors and any of your summery drink delights should you need to at no cost at all. So yeah, just had to read that facts this morning.
Perfect.
That's almost too generous. Yeah. Pascale, I'm sure you are like chomping at the bit to hire him. I mean, it's almost so generous you can't refuse. No, but I want to know, like, what is your favorite part of the job? Because for me, I hear your job title and immediately I'm just like, food. I'm just going to eat. Like, I don't even, like, all the technical, I'm like, ugh, whatever. What's your favorite part, Pascale?
I'd say like that creative. I love understanding the world of it. But I think when you're actually in the kitchen and you're creating and you put something together and then you have that aha moments of excitement, like this is gonna work. That is the best feeling. So that's probably the most fun because, to be honest, the actual cooking and I eat a lot, but the actual cooking is a small piece of that long chain, you know. So.
And then, by the way, how far in advance do you work? So, you mentioned trends. Do you work by seasons? Do you work by months? Are you already in like June and July? And what we'll
So brand plans, we try to do a 2-year brand plan. Can you believe it? But in essence, I can probably, if I really galvanize a team and there isn't massive equipment, I can do it in 6 months. But generally, it's about a year timeline.
Wow.
It's a hell of a thing to be planning that far ahead. And there must be some items that we take for granted now on our menu that you are still really proud of because some of them must have been breakthrough things. We think about how, for example, I didn't ever know peri wedges before you guys started with them. Was that one of your inventions?
No, I can't claim that one, but peri tater was. So sometimes, you get really stuck because you're not allowed to bring. So the challenges are like you really limited with how many ingredients you can bring into the restaurant. So supply chain are like, no more SKUs, and ops are like, you have to make this in a minute and you can't bring anything new in. So I just took 2 products and mixed them together. So sometimes it can be as easy as that. And there's so many, Gareth, like Bougie Bowl is just, I love Bougie Bowl. And the drinks, designer drinks weren't there when I got there. The salads have improved. If you had a grande salad lately, I mean, that's just like such a nice salad where you don't feel like you've lost out, There's so many.
I love that. All right. Well, listen, I mean, if anybody's thinking about these career path options, you can actually, you can check it out. Nando is obviously one of the coolest brands in South Africa. And some gap there might be exactly the gap that fits you. And it's worth getting hold of them and talking to them. It's terrific to meet you, Pascale, and it's good to have you on the show this morning. Thanks for talking to us.
Such a pleasure. Have a great day, guys.
Amazing. Good stuff.
Ciao.
Pascale Sobiecki, she's from Nando's. She's the head of food. It's amazing. You could be head of food in a company like that. And we do think of Nando's as being this little family business because all of us go to our local Nando's and it maybe even runs like that. But it's a massive operation. I mean, you heard her saying, when she comes up with an idea, supply chain, operations, marketing, they all get involved and they're like, you've got to do this, you got to do that. And
how many ingredients are in the kitchen, how long it will take. And oh, Lord, there's a lot of thought put into that. But now I can't stop thinking about food now.
I know. I was just thinking like maybe for lunch, I should have Nando's.
Lunch is too far. Like breakfast.
Would your ideal job be the ice cream taster? Seriously, you wouldn't get sick of that?
Wow. No, and no. I would not get sick of that. It's the ice cream. It's anything with halloumi. Nando's does this roasted veggie and halloumi wrap.
Okay, Wendy Williams. Okay, look at you.
Then those crushed ice drinks and get in my belly.
I think even back to the point that we started on this morning, even for someone like Pascale, there must be days where she's like, oh no, I don't want to do anything with food again. The food. Just like all of us complain about our jobs. I wonder if she ever does.
Oh, but I think she does.
I'm also thinking about the pressure though. Have you ever had people over and you're just catering for 6 people and you think, oh, they like this. Oh no, is that too much? Okay, let's put the sauce on the side so that people don't feel like there's too much sauce. Yes. Now you're catering for
the nation, literally.
The world. Oh no.
I've never felt that way because when people come to my house and there is food, I always go, look, if you're coming for the food, you're going to be disappointed. That's not my strength.
I love that you just set expectations very early, but but you know what it is? Like when you said that about Pascale, Gareth, I used to work for Lindt. I used to be a promo girl. And I remember the Lindt balls, the like little things. And I swear now, when someone actually gifts me Lindt, I'm just like, oh, fuck. I'm just like, really? I put it in my cupboard because I'm like, okay, who am I going to re-gift this to? I wait for someone to invite me to their house just so I can take it with me because I can't stand it. No.
Did you have too many of them? Is that
of course I did. I was like a greedy child in Charlie's Chocolate Factory. Like I had boxes of the stuff and I just eat it. And I'd be like, I could, what the worst part is? I was like, I could never get sick of this. Now I'm just like, I see it and I'm just like, no.
Well, I used to, as a kid, I remember my mother would tell us that her mother, my gran, used to grow strawberries. And they would go into the strawberry garden and they'd pick strawberries. And she said she now cannot see or touch or taste a strawberry without feeling sick. And I thought she was talking nonsense, but your stories corroborated that because, who would say no to Lindt chocolate? If you got sick of that, then maybe it is true. So I'll go and apologize to my mom later this month.
Apologize. It's so true. Ugh, I can't stand it.
Who could hate strawberries and Lindt chocolate? What are you people insane?
Yeah. Actually, I have personal examples with both of those. And no, I'm not sick of those at all. My grandfather and I used to make it a thing. There was a strawberry farm about an hour and a half out of Durban growing up and we'd drive there. And, I think at farms, they charge by the punnet. So you just pay for the punnet itself. And then you just go and you pick to your heart's content. I would eat so much while just picking that the punnet was the least of my worries. So I'm like, why are we talking about food again so much today?
It's very distracting. All right, let me go to an email from Coco, but it's not Marcelo Coco, the guy who was being interrogated at the State Capture Commission yesterday. Oh, wow. This is Coco who listens to us. And Coco says, while you mentioned yesterday how wonderful it is to have everything on one smartphone, because we were talking about all these devices that you would need to do the things that one smartphone does now. We have levels ahead in the Nordic countries. So wherever Coco is, it's somewhere in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, or Finland. Over 4 years, some private sector companies have been offering their employees an opportunity to have a microchip inserted in the back of their palm between the thumb and index finger. The chip is used to scan work and home doors as a key, to log in at work as a personal banking login, tax login, medical accounts, social media accounts, pay on digital pay machines, and public transport. The list goes on. So this is happening. Remember, people used to say you were going to get that microchip, and we're all terrified of being microchipped because that's the way that people are going to track you and they're going to control you. Seems like it's happening in some countries already. So, Coco, I didn't know that, but thank you.
Yeah, geez. I mean, the biblical part of me is just like, it was predicted, it was seen. The mark of the beast is here. I'm just like, oh no, keep my fingers intact and away from the chip. I'm not ready for Judgment Day. I haven't done all my penance yet.
Gotta start apologizing. But would you sign up for something like that, Candice?
Oh no. Like I'm not an early adopter at all. Like especially like with a vaccine, I'm like, sign me up. But no, with a microchip, because I also think like in South Africa, I think a little differently, because I'm just kind of like, okay, now they're gonna like drag me to the bank and be like, bring your palm, and if I'm like fighting, now they take. No, I'm just like, it's just too many. No. So.
I'm worried. But it's not so much that. I just don't. I think, if you can carry something around and then put it away, and lock it in a cupboard or lock it in a drawer or put it in your bag or leave it in your car, that to me is as good. You don't have to on your actual hand. I don't want to be microchipped anytime soon. I'm sorry if it makes me sound like I'm paranoid, but no, thank you.
But also, like you've seen with cell phones, right? Like, I mean, some meetings won't let you even come in with your cell phone. They're like, put it outside. But I mean, they pick up on our audio all the time. Now, imagine a chip. Like, they're going to be, and now now Facebook is releasing statements like, we have not tapped into your chip, like just because, no, it's just too much.
I don't believe these big tech companies when they say that stuff. I'm sorry. It does make me sound like I'm paranoid, but nah, not for me.
I think we should be rightfully paranoid.
Yeah, well, you can't trust them. We can't even trust them. They, as Candice says, they're spying on us anyway through our phones. That's why you get these targeted ads that you didn't want for things that you didn't know you were talking about. It's driving me crazy half the time. You see you can't do anything without getting advertised on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all the rest of them. It's crazy. Nikki sent me an email and said, there are a million things to love about the show, but one thing that makes me laugh is the impersonations. I even find myself rewinding the funniest ones. Okay, this is interesting. Here are my top 5. This is Nikki's top 5 impersonations on the show. Number 1. Well, I'll start at 5. Let's go backwards from 5. Okay. Leanne doing any male butch voice. When Leanne goes, she does the male voices. Number 4, Leanne doing don't be suspicious.
Yes.
Number 3 is Gareth doing pretty much anything on the loudhailer. 2 is Sia doing Kamala Harris. So you've got to give us a Kamala Harris quickly, Sia.
Oh, we did it, Joe. You got to be the next president of the United States. Oh, you did it, Joe.
Crazy laugh.
That's great.
And then the ultimate is me doing Joe Biden. My Joe Biden's crap. I haven't even worked on that very hard.
No, it's good enough because he also just mumbles.
Yeah, I suppose you just talk nonsense. It's a real bonus when there's a show that includes 2 or more of the above, according to Nikki. Yeah, cool. I've got to work on my Joe Biden. So thanks for the reminder. Try and get that going properly.
Well, on that note, it isn't much of a surprise, though, to know this, but people are already betting. They're professional bettors putting their money on things. They're already professional bettors who are putting their money at Kamala Harris becoming the president in 2024. Like, folks, we haven't even been through 2 seconds of a Biden administration. Like, calm down.
I think she's going to be before. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, because Joe's going to die.
Really?
That's what people. But I've heard. I've heard, and sometimes like Joe Biden is a little sleepy. God bless his soul. But I mean, he comes
a whole lot.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm already firing so many bullet holes, and since Judgment Day is coming, I don't want to be at the front of the line. But I mean, people are just like, look, the reason they chose Joe is because they wouldn't have voted for Kamala up front. Yeah. So since Joe's term in life is coming to an end shortly, Kamala's just going to step in, and then it's just going to be a smooth transition.
Let me give Candice a moment to clear something up. She's not wishing with Joe.
No, thank you, Gareth. Oh gosh, I mean, they cancel me. They definitely going to cancel me.
A very old man who is not entirely old there, and he is the oldest president in history. So he's probably not looking at too much more time on planet Earth. And if that's the case,
term in life.
Yeah, his term in life. And listen, you're right. You're right about another thing, Candice, is no one would have voted for Kamala. She didn't even get in through the primaries. no one cares about her. She's annoying, and we can see through her, and she's kind of there for a bunch of politically convenient reasons. But the way for her to get to the Oval Office is by Joe hopping the perch. If I were him, I wouldn't be accepting free drinks from Kamala.
No, Gareth.
Or but anything. Actually, I wouldn't stand by the steps with her. I wouldn't have, a letter opener around her. But I wouldn't have any peanuts, anything.
No, having said all of this, don't you guys think, I actually think she's got the chops to be a president. I think she's got, all the things that people don't like about her, the fact that she may have, she manipulated her way to power, whatever. I think those are the very things that could actually make her a pretty good president. So I'm not mad at it. What do you guys think? Do you think she could be like a good president?
I don't know. I had this argument with a friend of mine the other day, and my friend says that she knows more about Kamala than I do, which is entirely possible. I haven't really studied the woman. The little bits that I do know are not very attractive propositions. Her politics doesn't strike me as being anything vaguely in concert with my own. But who knows? Sometimes someone who's unpopular for a bunch of kind of silly reasons ends up being quite a good leader because they're willing to be unpopular. I'm not gonna judge. I haven't really paid much attention. I don't know a lot about her. I don't think she would be at my top list of people that I'd want to spend time with, but that's not always the good mark of someone who's in leadership. Sometimes you don't want a person who's likable. Sometimes you want to make unpopular decisions, which is why you got to keep an open mind to these things.
But then back to President Biden, there is no way right now they are just allowing the leader of the free world, the man who has access to nuclear codes, to just stagger around the White House and wake up with aches and pains. No, look.
There was a day the other day, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, where he basically took the whole day off to just nap and do old man stuff.
I think most definitely there's probably someone who has now been employed to just give him arthritis cream or to pump him with vitamins. No, think about the circumstances and just the ripple effect of having a sitting president die and just die of natural causes, and even just the look of the perceived power of the US. They can't afford it.
There's a White House pudding person who's been assigned.
Oh my God.
There's someone who's mashing all of his food and blending it so that it's nice and soft. They are checking his teeth every day. They're giving him calcium stuff for his bones. They can't afford to just have a president who... What? And then we have to have a funeral for the president and say, he tripped over a rug and that's how he died?
Oh my God.
Sorry, okay, I'm quiet now. I need to go. It's
this is entertaining, because we were all worried that once Trump left the White House, we'd have nothing to talk about. But we do. We have old people jokes. That's the best.
Oh my God.
Love it.
Bless him.
All right, Fatiswa says... they used to have, talking about Nando's here, but Fatiswa says they used to have those joined thighs meal at Nando's. The double thigh was it for me.
The double thigh.
Double thigh. I don't know if we're still talking about chicken, but okay.
Yeah.
You'll wait for it.
No. It could go anywhere, truth be told. It could.
Well, Candice, it's really good to see you again, and lots of compliments pouring in for you. Kabelo says, I love the energy of Candice. Beautiful soul. Absolutely. It's one of the reasons we love having her around. And it's great to connect with you again after all these months I haven't seen you.
Oh, thank you. And I love you guys. You guys are like my natural home. You're like home base. But actually the family I would have chosen, I would have chosen.
Now go out there and hit the promenade and
go be my regular Karen.
Yes.
I'm going to go put on my yoga pants now and go be titled.
That Cape Town housefrau that you've always wanted to be.
I'm hunting, Gareth. You have no idea. I'm hunting away. I'm like, poo. I'm like, any Joe Bidens on the promenade today?
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's great. I love it.
Oh my gosh, terrible,
thanks.
terrible.
Right. Candice Mama, everybody, you can also catch her on her own podcast. And thanks for joining us this morning. Sia and I will see you tomorrow, bright and early at 6 o'clock. Have an excellent day in the company of cliffcentral.com. Be good, and if you're not, take photos. Ciao.